it's Coach with Tactical Hyve. A little while ago, Miles put out to the community if you guys wanted to ask me some questions. So we've got a bunch of questions, and Miles has picked out a few of these, and we'll kind of go through them here. I haven't seen them yet, so we'll find them out together. All right, so before we get into the questions, this video is brought to you by the Sonoran Desert Institute. Now, if you're like me, you like to repair and modify your own guns. Now, SDI can help you take that hobby to the next level. SDI is an accredited online gunsmithing school, and you can get your education from them and turn your hobby into a successful career. Now, I'm not just saying this because they're sponsoring today's video. I'm a graduate of the DevGru program. Now, if you want more information, check out the description below. Let's get back to the video. Okay, so let's get into this. First one. What are some positive things about the 80s and 90s SEAL teams that you think are missing today? Values and mentality, etc. And I think the biggest thing now is we feed the guys too much. The new guys coming up, they're taught how to train, and they're given everything. They're kind of spoon-fed everything. And that's good to an extent, but back when I was coming up and the guys in the 80s and 90s, you had to do it yourself. There was nobody that was going to, help you through this. So it kind of retards your self-starting, ability, right? You don't exercise that. So the self-starting stuff is probably the biggest one, but then the world has changed, and back in the 80s and 90s, things were different, and it's going to be different for every generation. This generation has to deal with theirs, and I dealt with mine, and we'll leave it at that.
So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Next one, how has fitness training evolved with the teams? Well, back in the 80s and 90s, you kind of had two different ways to go. There was no set way of doing things. We did the circle PT in the morning, which is just calisthenics. But if you wanted to go one way or another, it was either bodybuilder or triathlete. There really wasn't anything in the middle. And now the functional strength and the tactical athlete program and these things have really helped out, and I think we're getting a much better, more focused, more well-rounded fitness level.
And they even gave us these nifty workout clothes.
What toll did the teams take on your body throughout your career, and how do you handle it? Well, let's see. I've had a couple of separated shoulders, a couple broken legs, rolled ankles, neck injuries, back injuries. It takes a toll. If you're out operating, it's going to wear on you. When I was younger, I bounced back pretty quick. You break a leg, hell, you're back working again in 6 months. These days, things don't heal quite as much. And how do I deal with it? How do I handle it? Motrin.
Oh, God, everything hurts.
I was adapting back to regular life when you got out. Honestly, after I got out, I'm still associated with the teams, so I still have that camaraderie with my brothers. But honestly, marry the right woman, okay? I've been married to my current wife for over 25 years now, and she and my kids are, that's what really grounds you. So make that good choice early on, guys. It took me 3 tries, but got a good one on the last one, right? I'm keeping her.
She's a keeper, that's for sure.
What does Coach think about people's focus on equipment versus basic skills today versus when he started? Well, it's pretty easy. Back in the day, you didn't have as much equipment, so you really had to focus on those skills, right? There were fewer choices in weapons, and just all the equipment and accoutrements was a lot less. So you really had to focus on making it work. And these days, we've got gear all over the place, and everybody likes that new shiny object, and they get kind of caught up on the gear over the skill level of using it. So that's what I'd say.
The only thing that separates us from the animals is our ability to accessorize.
And how has your own personal firearms training changed since becoming a civilian? And in what ways does it remain the same? Well, since I've been a civilian, I've been a firearms trainer. So my biggest focus has been on my ability to make my student understand and grow. And a lot of times you have to be able to break down things into basic movements and make it relatable to the individual. So that's been my biggest thing is that focus of training. For myself, the big thing that's changed, I do a whole lot more concealed carry training now, drawing from, clearing garments and stuff like that, because that's honestly, if I get into a situation, that's where it's going to start from. So I do a lot more of that these days.
In Special Forces, we teach our people to stay alive in the line of duty.
If you could bring one piece of current kit back in time to your operating days, what would it be? Oof. Well, these days, nods, everybody has night vision. Back when I started, you didn't have much night vision, and what you did have was big and clunky, and maybe your point man, your rear security, and your whoever's leading the patrol would have it, and that was it. Now everybody's got it, and it works really good. So I'd say, night vision is probably a big force multiplier on that one.
Industrial strength night vision goggles.
If you could pick only one chest rig to use for whatever the situation is, what would it be? Well, that's kind of broad, guys. For most of anything I would run into my regular day, I'm not out hiking out in the woods, a whole lot. So I'd probably leave that stuff at home. But just a good chicken plate chest rig with just some pouches across the front. That'll get you through most situations. As a good general place to start.
And then they slapped this bulletproof vest on me and gave me a gun.
How has getting older changed the way you trained? Whew, big time. As you get older, you're going to discover this, you 20-year-olds, everything just heals just like that. Yeah, that'll last until you're about 30. And then when you're 40, things just start hurting for no good reason, from all the silly things you did back in your 20s. And now I'm on the wrong side of 50. Things just start hurting for no reason at all. So my biggest focus when I go to the gym is to not hurt myself. Okay, so I have to maintain a very strict exercise regime, and with a focus on functional strength and flexibility. You got to have that flexibility, guys. My knees especially were hurting, and I've been taking steps to get those better, and it's coming right along. So shout out to Ben Patrick, the knees over toes guy. His stuff works.
Hurt my knees coming up and down those stairs.
What advice would you give to someone wanting to join the SOF community across all branches? Well, limber up and hydrate. Number one, if you really want to do this job, understand it's not this comfortable watching TV in your, comfortable climate controlled, living room. And you're like, wow, yeah, that looks like fun. No, it's miserable. If it don't suck, we don't do it. All right. So number one, understand what you're getting into. And once you've decided that that's what you want to do, keep your eye on the prize. All right. And don't screw up. Don't make yourself unhireable. Okay. You can disqualify yourself from this program fairly easily.
No whining, no crying, no puking.
How do you control the adrenaline dump when things go sideways? It's all in your breath, guys. Control your breath. That's one autonomic thing that you can control. You can't control how your gut digests food or how, your heart a little bit, but you're going to control your heart through your breathing. You take slow, deep breaths, and you focus on that, and that'll help reduce that adrenaline dump, that emotional excitement that you're going to feel.
I try to slow my heart down and breathe the fire out of my lungs.
Besides running and gunning, what type of self-defense training would you suggest someone take? Pick one. Boxing, wrestling is good, and easily defined. Jiu-jitsu is really strong these days. You want to have your physical game up there, okay? You can't always just pull out a gun and shoot somebody. And, if you get into an altercation, even if you're armed, that might not be the right answer. So you need to be able to handle yourself. If you can stay on your feet as much as possible, I would suggest it, okay? Jiu-jitsu is awesome, but if you're on the ground wrapped up with one guy and another guy comes along, you can just kick your head in. So if you can find some place that teaches Filipino stick fighting, arnis, eskrima, something like that, that's really good for angles and all that. But boxing and wrestling, that'll get you a good way.
Note to self, learn to fight.
Do you ever use a weapon in combat that wasn't yours or anyone's on your team, like a battlefield pickup? And in combat, no, I never did. But I know guys that did have to. And we always trained, especially with AK-47s and the RPGs. Those were the big one that you really wanted to know how to use because there's going to be plenty of those pretty much wherever we were going to go. So we did plenty of training on those, but never had to actually use it.
Where'd you get that gun?
How deep are the difference between military and civilians in firearm training? Well, civilians, you got to kind of care and feed for them differently, okay? When you're in the military, if you do something I don't like, you have some incorrect behavior that I want to correct. In the SEAL teams, we can make you wet and sandy and uncomfortable, and that makes it matter to you in the moment, right? Most civilians won't stand for that, okay? They're paying money. These guys are paying in sweat. So most civilian training, the way I run civilian classes is I try to go with the 3-hour, 300 rounds, okay? Because after that, either 3 hours or 300 rounds, you're going to start losing focus. So we do the majority of the training portion in that first 3 hours. Then we'll take a little break and then maybe do some competitions and stuff a little lighter in the afternoon. That's normally how my training day goes, just to keep things interesting and keep guys focused, and so that we don't have any safety issues.
If you ladies leave my island, if you survive recruit training, you will be a weapon.
Okay, so those were the long answer questions, and now apparently Miles has it rigged here for some rapid fire questions.
Let's get into it.
Okay.
All right, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
All right, rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
Hold the trigger down and pray.
Yeah, let's see what happens here.
Okay, guys, starting off, rapid fire. If you could only own one rifle, which of your current rifles would you grab for most situations and why?
One rifle. I got a bunch of them. I would probably go with a 5.56 AR-15 with a red dot and a flashlight. And, barrel length, 16 inches, maybe a touch under. That'll get you through most situations that I can think of.
Pretty generic pick for pretty generic broad set of
broad question.
It works.
Hey,
easy to find parts, easy to find mags, easy to find ammo.
Ammo's everywhere.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Why choose a nickname one letter away from COCK?
Okay. I've had the nickname Coach since I was about 5 years old, back in kindergarten, right? And if I spell it like you would spell a high school coach, C-O-A-C-H, then when you spell my whole name, you end up spelling it Coacchiolo, And so I figured, well, I'll just drop the A. So C-O-C-H is how I spell coach, and that's why.
All right. Do you think people today tend to overthink their guns and equipment?
Good God. Yes. Everybody's thinking about guns and equipment, and you really need to be focused on training. Okay? If you got one gun, learn how to use it. Don't be chasing the whistles and bells. It's the newest gadget is not always better. Learn what you got. Okay?
If you could change one thing about the industry or the firearms community, what would it be and why?
Okay, two things actually. One of them is, again, lose the chasing the new gear and get trained. Focus on your training. And the other thing is, and we get a lot of this in some of the comments, it's like, guys, we're all in this together. Just because you learn this one way, don't look at something that somebody else is doing, has a different technique and go, that's BS, and here's why, because I know better. Like, dude, let's work together, okay? Everybody needs to get better, and training is the key, right? So don't harp on guys for using a slightly different technique than you learned at whatever class you took 2 years ago.
All right, so up next, I'm going to change. We pretty much had two training questions. Here's another one, but a little bit different. Would most seasoned SEALs make it through Hell Week if you put them through it again without notice?
Without notice. Okay, yeah. Okay, most seasoned SEAL, when you say seasoned SEAL, he's got injuries, okay? But yeah, most guys would, they would do it. Drop of a hat, you go back, you get back, jumped into the gang again. But would they make it all the way through? Probably not because of injuries, okay? When you're younger and fresh, you're way more resilient. But old, guys like us, we ain't gonna quit. So you're gonna drag us out of there on a stretcher.
Yeah, I've been Hell Week tired twice on deployment. It happens.
It happens. Yeah.
All right, what's the worst piece of gear you were issued?
Okay, the absolute worst piece of gear. It wasn't even a cheap piece of gear. It was a thing called a Buckmaster. Yeah, one of the first things I got issued at SEAL Team 5, my initial issue, and this knife, it's a victim of the Rambo cult and whatever. It was huge. It was all metal. It had like spikes on it for using as a grappling hook or something, and I turned it back in, still in the box. It was completely and utterly useless.
Yeah, you guys can Google a picture of it. It was like a Rambo knife / grappling hook / workout every time you picked it up. I never think I've ever even seen one in real life. It was more of an 80s thing.
You had to be there. Had to be there.
Well, we were living in a Rambo world, as well we should.
All right, what's next?
All right. What year did you go to DevGru?
Oh, that's easy. I showed up there in 1995, and I was there through the middle of 2003.
Okay. What is the strangest / weirdest thing you observed on an operation?
Okay, so cleanly, we hit this one high-value target, and he happened to be an ostrich rancher. And right before we entered on this, I was in the stack, and we were going to enter this building, and I looked through the window, and I didn't know what I was seeing. It was really kind of an amorphous blob moving around. Of course, we're on nods, and then all of a sudden, this head came down on the window, and it was an ostrich. It was his face. I was looking at his body and not seeing what I was seeing, not registering what I was seeing. And then when his head came down and looking like, bah, bah, I was like, ah! And we stopped the clearance right there because those things are freaking dangerous. So, yeah.
The ostrich war.
Yeah.
SEALs against ostrich.
Although, think of the drumsticks, man. If we'd whacked one, we would have been eating good. But anyway.
What was the biggest firearms advancement you saw during your time in the SEAL teams?
Okay, that's got to be SOP mod. Just that whole special operations, peculiar modifications was the biggest thing. Just being able to increase the capability of your weapon, with lights and lasers and various optics and stuff. It was that was key.
You became more accurate So you carried less ammo, but the weight stayed the same because I had all this battery, Radio Shack stuff hanging off of you.
It does. It makes you more efficient, though, and it's a program, so it can grow. So you've got block 1, block 2, and it keeps getting better, and it gives you just a bigger basket of stuff that you can apply.
And our last rapid fire question: what was the best prank in the teams you can talk about?
That I can talk about. Okay. All right. Best one. At Dam Neck, we had cages, and this is pre-war, so we had time to do this kind of stuff. Once the war started, there wasn't much time to goof off. But one of the guys had started a little tete-a-tete, but the best one, he'd taken a rubber raft, a combat rubber raiding craft, and they have an automatic inflation CO2 canister. So he put this thing under his gear in his cage and rigged it so when the mark opened his cage, it tripped it, and this thing expanded in this little, 5 by 7 foot cage, and just crushed everything. It was.
It's lucky it didn't crush him.
Yeah, it was in retaliations for some pretty nasty stuff that the guy had done. So it was deserved, but that's clean wise. That's the best one.
Nice and clean. All right, man. Thanks for the insight on the questions. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay tuned for our next segment because we're going to have Dave Steinbach on the channel, and he's going to be answering his 20 questions.
And he was a ranger, so there's going to be some weirdness in there.
It might be a different interpretation of what is clean and what is not. We'll have to wait and see.
It'll be a whole other flavor. All good.
Okay, guys. Thanks for being here. This is Dora, Coach.
Out.